Good morning. This is Life Lessons Podcast. My name is Doug Spence. I'm a life coach, and I'm here to share things that I've learned over the past 20 years on mindset, psychology, spirituality, so that you can start taking control of how you feel, therefore being able to take control of your action, and therefore being able to take control of your life. I wanted to talk a little bit more about something I touched on in a previous podcast about right and wrong. This question of what is right and what is wrong. And this came up when I was talking about Buddhism and the Eightfold Path, where there was, within the Eightfold Path, there are 8 things like right action, right speech, right mindfulness, right concentration, and a few others, all adding up to 8. And when I was learning about this Buddhism stuff, the question came to me like, okay, well, it says right this, right that. Well, what is right? Right thought. So what is right? And at the time I was working as a security guard, and I was working from midnight till 8 in the morning, and I was completely by myself. So I had a lot of time to think. This was in 99 or 2000. So there were no cell phones. I didn't have access to the internet at that time till later. 6 months later, so I got access to the internet. But so I just had books, and I had a lot of time to think. And I was contemplating, what is right, what is wrong, because we've all been, we've been taught what the difference is, and when we're kids, we have a better grasp. Before the age of 6 years old, there's a deep knowing of what's right and wrong, and then as we get older, we tend to kind of push the boundaries a little bit, and by the time we're teenagers, most of that goes out the window. We just, whatever works for me is what's right, and what doesn't work for me is what's wrong. So I was thinking about this a lot, and what I realized at the time, or what I thought at the time, according to what I was reading about Buddhism, was that if it caused pain, then it was wrong. And if it didn't cause pain, then it was right. And that was kind of the closest I could get. So I determined at that time, or I thought at that time, that, okay, it comes down to pain. So causing other people pain is what's considered wrong. And when it came to the Buddhism of right speech, right action, right thought, there were things that would cause other people pain. And then in turn, they would, have a reaction or become angry or whatever it was. And then they may want to cause you more pain. And it kind of would create this cycle of pain. And then when it came to the thought, that was the most useful part. When the thought caused pain, then it was considered that it was not right. It was, wrong. So that part I found the most useful, because when you would use mindfulness, you would start off by putting your attention on your body, and you'd ask yourself, does it feel, does my body physically feel pain, pleasure, or neutral? And you would just put your awareness on that, and just put your attention on that, and just be with that for a moment. Then you would put your attention on your mental state and ask yourself, does my mental state feel pain, pleasure, or neutral? And you would determine, oh, yeah, there is like maybe an underlying sense of pain, or there's a lot of pain at that moment. Then you would go to the thought. What is the thought? And you would make yourself aware, oh, the thought is she should be doing this, or she shouldn't be doing that. Or maybe it's like an imagining of something, picture, something playing out in your mind, some kind of video playing in your mind. That's the thought. And then you would just ask yourself, how do I feel mentally and emotionally when I think that thought? And you would be like, is that a painful thought, pleasurable thought, or neutral thought? So you'd use that mindfulness process and go kind of throughout your day being mindful of all your thoughts, looking at whether things are causing pain, pleasure, or neutral. And the ones that were either neutral or pleasure would be considered right. And the ones that were not were considered wrong. So that is the simple kind of definition I went off of for years of the difference between right and wrong. Pain. Anything that causes pain is wrong. Anything causes that is neutral or pleasurable, it would be right. So that worked for the most part, especially controlling my own thoughts and helping myself to get myself out of anger or get myself out of fear or resentment. But it didn't clear up any baggage, anything that I was holding on to from the past. So when I was growing up, I grew up without a father. I met my father 3 times, and the one time the longest that I spent with him, I was 16. He showed up at my house drunk, smelling like booze, and he gave me money, and he hugged my friend, and he thought it was neat. So that was like a very painful memory. So when he did that, I judged him, and I judged him as lazy, inconsiderate, and selfish, because he never had a job. He was an alcoholic his whole life, and he never took care of his kids. And I assumed he was just kind of doing his own thing, whatever he wanted to do, get a drunk, be self-and-eat. So, yeah, that was a painful memory, and the lack of his presence was also perceived as a painful memory. So, Then when I was 33, I had my first son. And I knew I had all this baggage, and I was like, okay, I gotta do something about this. And I'd known about this book called The Breakthrough Experience, and I'd read the book, and there's this chapter in it where he outlines a process called the DeMartini method. And in the chapter, he's talking it up like it's the most powerful thing he's aware of, and I knew I had to eventually do it, but I think I had that book for at least a year before I finally sat down and did the work on my dad. And I was in the car, my son was napping in the back, and I had an hour to finally do this. So the first part of it was to define the trait, action, or inaction, that person. This takes you to a really objective point of view. So at the time I used the trait, and I labeled him selfish, inconsiderate, and lazy. Then as you go through, you look at a series of questions, and all of these questions come from an infinite perspective. And one of the questions was, who has perceived him, this person, doing the opposite? And that was a tough one. I'm like, what? Like, when has anyone ever seen my dad do the opposite? Maybe it was like my mom when I was a kid. Maybe it was my brother or sister when I was a kid. Like, I don't know. Like, I only met the guy for like 3 minutes, and then 20 minutes, and then 5 minutes. Like, I thought I just didn't have enough information. But if you have enough information to create baggage, then you have enough information to balance out the baggage. So I kept digging. It wasn't easy. I kept digging. I kept thinking, who is seeing him doing the opposite? Who is seeing him doing the opposite? Then all of a sudden, it hit me. Holy shit. I saw him do the opposite. And it was when he came to my birthday. So he remembered, what I realized was he remembered the day that I was born. He remembered my birth date. And he somehow had to find my address. And then he had to get his butt to my house. And he had polio when he was a kid. So he had a bum leg, a really bad withered leg. So he took the bus, and then he walked all the way to my house. And he must have been terrified. Like, he hadn't seen us in 10 years. So he's going to have to face his kids, his ex, just to come and see me on my 16th birthday. So of course he drank. I mean, that's his strategy for dealing with life, challenges of life. Then the guy hadn't worked a job in his life, well, that I was aware of. He was on welfare for like 20 years. I know he did some other random jobs, but he was on welfare or the government for 20 years, and he gave me and my brother money. So whatever little money he had, he gave it to us on that day. And I realized that I witnessed him being considerate, being unselfish, and being hard work. And it was the exact opposite as what I judged him as. And I got tears in my eyes, and I felt love, and I realized, holy, my dad actually loved me. And that first off, I was shocked at how amazing the process worked, which now I'm a DeMartini facilitator for that process. It's part of my coaching. But second of all, that that kind of blew apart my definition of what I thought right and wrong were. And I realized that pain is not only wrong, it's also, we call it wrong initially. We judge it as wrong initially. But pain is part of our growth. And pain is actually feedback. It's nothing to add a judgment to. Pain is telling us that our mind is limited. We've limited someone else, either ourselves by making a limited judgment of ourselves, or we've limited someone else by making a limited judgment of them, or it's our perception of the world and reality, and we're judging that as limited. When in reality, after everything that I've realized, is that this reality and ourselves and others are actually infinite. So whenever we take on this limited perspective, there's a force of nature called pain, a feedback system that is saying, hey, you are not seeing things straight. You're not seeing truth. Here's some pain for you until you figure it out. Something to motivate you to get out of this. So now I look at pain from a completely different point of view, and I just see it as feedback. I just see it as a gift that's there to help us to learn, that's there to help us to grow, and it will help us to connect with others. It's there to benefit and serve us. It's there to help us to live a more authentic life, and to start taking control of our lives, and to start creating and start leading. So it takes all of the moralistic judgment out of it, and it just looks at it like it's a design. There's a design, there's a natural design, an intelligent design that's going on in this world. And a lot of us don't see it, and we create those judgments. So I'm here to share that with you. This is one of the life lessons. This is something huge that has served me and helps me day to day to deal with any challenge that comes my way. That helps me to maintain a calm and stable state of mind. So I would say that the life lesson here is that pain is just feedback that's trying to help you to expand your awareness. Pain is feedback that's trying to help you to raise your awareness, to start seeing things from a more infinite perspective, to help see people as more than they are, greater than they are, to help see yourself as more than you are and greater than you are, and also the world, to see it as more. Okay, I gotta head off to work now, guys, so good chatting. Have a good one. Bye.
Hey guys, thank you for listening to the Life Lessons Podcast. Check out the next episode, Life Lessons Podcast number 7, where I go deeper into learning about grief and how to resolve grief in a very short period of time, how you can remap the brain when it comes to grief. And I teach you a little bit more about the DeMartini method and how it's so effective in resolving grief and how it works. Check it out. Life Lessons Podcast number 7 coming up.